Hello and welcome to a special presentation just ahead of the Indian Budget 2014. This is the annual presentation of India's economic policy, also its update on taxes and revenues of the country. I'm Pranjal Sharma. Today we're going to be discussing a very critical aspect of what the economy needs, which is entrepreneurship, and specifically how technology-based entrepreneurs need to be encouraged and a better ecosystem needs to be made for that. Joining me in this discussion are Manish Vij, founder of Smile One Group. He's been a serial entrepreneur. Also with me is Rajat Tandon, senior director at National Association of Software and Service Companies, which is the apex body for the IT sector in the country. Rajat heads an initiative called 10,000 Startups, and as the name suggests, it is really about ensuring that 10,000 new startups are created across the country in the shortest possible time. Also with us is Rakesh Khar. He's head of the Z Research Group. Z is a very big media house in the country which spans several sectors. Let me begin with Manish. You had a long history of very successful launches and exits as well, because an exit is always seen as a great idea of success. Tell us, Manish, what kind of challenges and opportunities do entrepreneurs in India face?
So Pranjal, it's been about 14 years since I first incorporated my first startup, and since then we've done it a few times. I've been actually seeing in the last 14 years, it's only the entrepreneurs who have been helping the entrepreneurs. So the things have become much better. I remember times 14 years back when raising just about an angel investment or a seed capital was so tough. Practically, it wasn't available. But now is the time when I see early stage entrepreneurs, it's relatively a lot easier for someone to kind of start a new technology entrepreneurship.
So 14 years ago when you started, launching a new company was tough, but is it easier now?
So I would say that from a government standpoint, things have either the same or they have become a little more worse. Rather than but yes, the entrepreneurial ecosystem is helping the entrepreneurs. They've kind of built an ecosystem around it. But from an incorporation of companies and facing tax issues and rules and regulations and the new companies law, I think it has only become a lot tougher for early stage first generation entrepreneurs. I am a first generation entrepreneur, and for someone who doesn't have an ecosystem, doesn't have trained CAs or financial accountants to kind of hire at the starting of the company, it has only become a lot more tougher.
Well, that's not very pleasant to know. In this atmosphere, Rajat, when you try to encourage 10,000 new startups, it must be a severe task. How do you convince people to go for startups? Everybody can take the safety of a good job if they come out of a good college.
Absolutely, and I think Pranjal, extremely good point, and Manish, you kind of chimed in very well to say that the ecosystem over here is still building up, and I think that's where the 10,000 startups took the charter of actually impacting about 10,000 startups in 10 years. So we've just completed 1 year of the program, the initiative, and I think probably what we've seen in this particular sector, and typically in India, in the technology sector, where I think 80% of the revenues are still coming out from the big 200 companies, and there are about 16,000 other companies which contribute only 20%. So I believe it's time that we kind of build these smaller companies. We are able to support these smaller companies so that these companies can step up to be what the larger companies are doing, and the larger companies are putting across their footprint on a global level.
But do you see when you reach out to young wannabe entrepreneurs, those who have the fire and the good ideas, do you see that coming from established centers of excellence and entrepreneurship, or do you see that spreading to new areas?
So again, I think when we talk about India, the focus and the hub happens to be in and around Bangalore. That's where the startup ecosystem is extremely evolved, and as Manish was putting across that it's in the ecosystem to be successful. It's some of the successful startups step up to actually go out and support the ecosystem and the new generation startups which are coming across. So and that's kind of successfully been happening in Bangalore. The other areas like the NCR and Mumbai and Pune are certainly on the ramp and picking up. We've seen some extremely good startups and entrepreneurs coming out from tier 2, tier 3 cities. So I think it's in our interest that we go out and benefit these startups, and I think that's where we hopefully look at the budget to support us in certain initiatives. While we at NASSCOM kind of have something which is, we've kind of proposed a 500 crore item, which is the the India Technology Entrepreneurship Mission, which is go out, and the primary focus is to look at some of the areas which are regulations, behind regulations, behind funding, because early stage funding is extremely difficult. Incubation, so if I have an idea, where do I take the idea? Who's going to support that idea? So the availability of good incubators in the country is very limited. So not only we have to look at incubator centers here, but I think we've got to step up our products to go out global. So we have to look at some technology launch pads or ventures where our Indian startup companies are able to launch themselves, or the IT companies are able to launch themselves.
Incubation itself is a business in many ways.
Absolutely. So it's a support. I wouldn't call it a business. It's a support, and it's a very important element of validating your product, getting the right kind of mentorship behind it,
right,
and certainly getting the early stage money supported on it.
Right. I'll come back to you on
Sure.
this aspect, but let me bring in Rakesh here. Rakesh, you've been tracking the economic changes for more than 25 years in the country. Tell us that, has the thinking in the government changed when they talk about policy making, especially economic policy making? The visible sounds that you hear are of the big business houses going and asking for either concessions or advantages or some kind of enabling environment, but nobody really talks about entrepreneurship. Nobody really talks about the young startups. Is there anybody in the government who is even concerned about that?
Well, it's good we're talking about entrepreneurship ahead of the budget. Let me make a macro statement first, which is a little radical. I think budgets have lost their relevance. Either you retire them or you reinvent them. In reinvention, there's a huge opportunity. This is the 84th budget that's going to be presented by Arun Jaitley. If you look at 20 years budgets, you just recall two of them. At least I recall two of them. Please correct me if you recall more. One is Manmohan Singh's budget, 91. Second is the VDIS, Voluntary Disclosure Scheme, the dream budget that Chidambaram launched. Beyond that, all budgets have been a washout. In terms of really carrying a tangible impact, he has a historic opportunity. And entrepreneurship has to be the cornerstone of that budget in terms of a policy framework. Otherwise, as of today, let me agree with you and most of these points that they have carried. Entrepreneurship has carried on its own. It's a flow that it has generated on its own. Government, there have been noises, there have been slogans, but there has been very little done on the ground. Let me give you one specific instance. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, he headed a task force on SMEs, where TK Nair was the member secretary. Himself documented a 100-page report. I have gone through the report. It was presented amid huge fanfare. And it also talked about a government-backed PE fund of 5,000 crores for startups. That government has gone, and even before it went, that report sank without a trace. So that's the status of the affairs. Of course, this government, led by Modi, has been talking about, unleashing the entrepreneurship.
But can the government actually do anything? Because, should the government even be getting into the PE business? Right?
I have 2 points there. Yeah. First, government has to do the policy framework. If the policy framework was not done in 91, private sector media would not have happened. We would not have been sitting here. There is a role for policy framework. There is a role for matching action and encouragement to that entrepreneur, which is not happening as of now.
But
Rajat,
so let me bring him here.
Yeah.
Rajat, what role does the government have? I mean, should the government be getting into doling out PE funds and angel investment funds? I mean, do they even have the capacity and the capability of doing that?
So I think what we're seeing right now, a couple of buzzwords like microfunding, microfinancing, crowdfunding. So these are certain initiatives which have to happen in the country, because what we're seeing is yes, if the government does not intervene at this point of time, the early stage startups will die.
But specifically, what should the government do?
I think that's where when we propose this about the 500 crore item, the technology initiative or the mission, which the government should go on and launch out, so that put across some set of money to at least go out and build the regulatory framework, which is kind of inclusive. Certain tax benefits should be given across to investors. Why should they be penalized in supporting across an early stage startup? In terms of, like I mentioned, across acceleration, funding, extremely important, incubation, extremely important. we should have, more bodies supporting it. The government, state governments should be helping across, building these centers of excellences. Our skills, startup community requires a certain different types of skills. So we have to go out in education colleges and actually be talking about various skills to be, developed, programs being offered. These are certain small initiatives which need to take place. And I think without that,
Pranjal, on this, there's still some work that's been done in the IT sector. There's been no work done in non-IT sectors in terms of serial entrepreneurship. There's a young friend I know who was an engineer with Maruti. He's a mechanical engineer. He suddenly felt that, enough of doing a job for 4 or 5 years, I want to do entrepreneurship. He wanted to do adventure tourism. And he stuck his neck out. His wife was also working, and he started an adventure tourism company in this country, in Lajpat Nagar. He's been struggling to even get basic information on how to fund it. In IT sector, at least there's a body like NESCOM, there's a BPO association. There are some people who are, there are some signposts. Right. In non-IT sector, where there's a lot of talent in tier 2, tier 3 cities, and there's a lot of lateral thinking, there is nobody to tell. So that's where government at least can be the repository of information and guidance and mentoring, either through direct seed funding, or at least in terms of telling them where to go. He's taken 1.5 years to locate 10 lakh or 50 lakh rupees.
Let me turn to you, Manish. Rajat is talking about incubation, Rakesh is talking about a better ecosystem, but as an entrepreneur, you're at the cutting edge. What is ideal incubation for you? Because this is something which even, the global audience on Yahoo, which is watching us now, they'd like to know what kind of ideal incubation can happen in India for not just the people in India, but a lot of smart professionals across the world want to come back to India and start their own ventures.
Right. So, I was in fact listening, and I was just thinking, let's see, entrepreneur is like, he has a fire in the belly. Okay. There are a lot of problems and challenges that an entrepreneur faces, but he still strives, he still goes ahead, and he still continues to do things. So if you look at the roti kapda makan of entrepreneur, what is the basic need? He doesn't want, a lot of things practically.
So now it's roti kapda makan and free Wi-Fi.
And free Wi-Fi for entrepreneur. But what are the necessities of an entrepreneur?
Right.
One, he needs he doesn't want any problems around setting up his company. He doesn't want to go around and face tax problems. He doesn't want to go around, and so till some point of time, till he really becomes from an entrepreneur, he becomes a businessman. Give him some space.
He needs a mentor or a guide.
He needs guide. He needs from a government. What does he want from government? He wants single window clearances. I think that is a very, very important.
So let me separate the two, and maybe any of you would like to come in onto this. One is ease of doing business and extending it to ease of starting a business. Right. That's a process issue where you need to have clearances in place, etc.
Correct.
Second is to even tell people what are the sequencing of steps to be taken. That's guiding, and one is clearances and one is guidance. So I would separate the two. So therefore my question to all of you in fact is, clearances, clearly a government has a role in making things easier.
Correct.
Instead of 20 forms, can I just fill one form please?
Yeah.
Right. But guidance, can the government give guidance, or should the guidance come from the private ecosystem?
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think the guidance is available from fellow entrepreneurs more than enough. If you goes out and seeks, I think guidance is available, and government probably can't give guidance. Government can only do policy frameworks, and somebody is sitting in San Francisco wants to kind of now come to Bangalore and do a startup. He would rather say, let me be in San Francisco and cater to the Indian market, because think about it. For him to start a business in San Francisco, pick up an angel funding, pick mentors, is like a week's process. Whereas if he comes back to India, co-working spaces, a very small issue. Like I was saying, the second, out of the roti kapda makan, what is the second thing? He wants an office to work. Taking up a real estate space to kind of go out and work. Today, we have some co-working spaces starting to come over in Delhi, Bangalore, Bombay, etc., which charges a very, very nominal amount for a startup to start working tomorrow without any hassles, without any lock-ins, etc., etc. Beautiful. Think about it.
But you need more of that.
We need more of that. We need government to actually encourage the real estate developers to create co-working spaces.
Is that happening, Rajat?
No.
So in terms of that's the initiative which we're also looking at. The government does support and has come on, one particular state. But again, this has to be not just limited to one particular state. This has to happen everywhere. I mean, it's the entrepreneurs like saying, this is part of the Makan.
So
this
when you give your inputs as NASSCOM to the government for changes in the startup ecosystem, especially the processes and the clearances, what are the specific changes that you would like to see?
So again, I think, like we kind of articulated, yes, it's the ease of setting up the business, right? Whether it's behind tax, whether it's filing my IP. I mean, it should be as simple as, what it's globally, it should be available here.
So what is holding it back? I mean, what is the challenge that somebody faces?
So today, in terms of, there is a policy which comes out, there is a framework which comes out, and again, the clarity behind is not there. And the startup ecosystem today, they are more working towards building their products rather than they want a cumbersome thought of saying, what is the policy behind it? I'm not the legal expert. I'm not the tax expert. I'm a product expert. My expertise is building that product. I mean, and that's where the guidance I need is, or the support which I need, not only comes in a good framework, but also saying that, connect me across. If I make a good product, I mean, why doesn't the government look at, they have a very cumbersome policy of buying products from startups or from the ID companies. So, lower the expectations down.
So which means that, when government has to procure services or products from startups, they come up with these 15-year, 10-year, 5-year experience rules, which basically shuts out all new innovation. Is that a problem, Rakesh?
Well, again, 3 points I want to make. One is doing business in India, that of course is well documented, and this government is keen to, bring some cheer in that. Within that, there has to be a separate window for the startup business, which is very clearly documented, where starting a business is more important than, making it easy for a business to grow. That's the point Pranjali was making. Second, why not, in this mindset that this government has, led by the Prime Minister, why not have an entrepreneurship ministry? We have a SME ministry, which is essentially a political non-entity. It's given more for accommodating a politician rather than a very proactive ministry. Instead of having it as a parking slot for ex-politician, why not raise the level and raise the standard and have an entrepreneurship ministry where starting a business is well documented? Second, again, as part of that Prime Minister's note on SMEs, there is this procurement note for PSUs, 20% for startups for PSUs, which has been hanging fire for the last 20 years.
That's a very critical point.
Why is it not being done? It just requires a cabinet note to be cleared by the cabinet and done. 20% procurement in defense, in railways, in all PSUs would mean a huge chunk of new business which could be administered by the entrepreneurship ministry.
I'll give you another example. Working capital requirement is a very small issue actually if you look at from a very large issue, sorry, if you look at from a startup standpoint. We started an e-commerce company, and we wanted working capital. Now, banks don't understand it. If we have to go to venture capital, they will of course take our equity. And today we have no other support to kind of raise venture capital. If we become a medium-sized company, we cannot, go to a stock exchange to kind of list. I mean, you need a certain size to go and get stock exchange. Just raising working capital without liquidating your equity, there are no options in the country. A startup, an entrepreneur does not have assets to give out. Think about where can you get this?
It's only intellectual assets.
It's only intellectual assets. The banks didn't understand at the 2 years back, how can they give working capital to an e-commerce company? Right. And we had to raise, for just raising that working capital, we had to kind of give out a lot of equity to the venture capital.
But are the banks wiser now?
I don't think so. They need assets. They're also clutch. They need assets to give out a working capital requirement. There is some kind of a SME, NSIC or something like that. NSIC. But an entrepreneur thinks, should I go there and fill forms out?
But they're also very, very attuned to the traditional old school, old economy manufacturing of machine tools and things like that. But not really. Even in machine tools, you have machines and maybe a factory shed as collateral for raising funds. But if it's a startup of 5 bright young people, then what do they have as collateral? So basically banking reform or banking system needs to be far more sensitive, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. You can see the pain Manish is talking about, right? So it's quite evident that if Manish at this stage, look at the thousands of entrepreneurs which are there and who today, technically, they are well supported. With cloud infrastructure, they don't have to put a lot of money on technology. Yeah. So all they have is a brilliant idea. I think India can create 50,000 tech startups by 2020, and I think they can contribute to nearly 2% of the GDP here. So I think that's the focus should be, how can we help these early stage startups? I mean, I met across with these 3 school boys, class 10th, 11th, and 12th. Clearly, they did a hackathon. Overnight, they developed a fantastic solution. Now, there are 20 people who are sitting there and clapping, but again, how do we take them to the next step?
And Rakesh, if they have these school guys who set up a company, there's some labor law will apply to them and stop them from working, right?
Exactly. So that's where there has to be a major shift, paradigm shift in the mindset in the government also. But I do firmly believe that government, especially for a new business, has to play a significant role. Maybe a guy like Narayan Murthy comes in as the minister because he has a mindset, he has gone through it. You need someone who has seen the pain and also knows the potential that can be scaled when this kind of a drive is undertaken. And replication, I would also say replication. You talked about some limited successes. We of course have had limited success in the IT pack and very little success in non-IT pack. We need to replicate that. I think the ecosystem in the private sector that's available today needs to farm out. I mean, I do know NASSCOM has spread out to tier 2, tier 3 cities, but is it really beyond some cosmetic conferences and are we doing some groundwork in terms of tapping that talent which has an idea? As he rightly pointed, it's an intellectual idea.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what drives serial entrepreneurship today. We're not setting up a huge manufacturing hub. Apps, the app world is a huge opportunity, and I'm sure Indian young kids have a lot of bright minds. Yesterday, railways, the railway budget, it has thrown up a huge opportunity in private sector in services. So I would like the railway ministry to come and document what all is available to a young entrepreneur. There would be tens of services which can be documented. So that could be just the first point that someone like you and you in your community would like to tap and start thinking, I can make napkins for the railways. I mean, let's not only see opportunity in IT pack. I have nothing against the IT pack, but I'm saying there are enormous opportunities.
And a lot of this is technology enabled.
Exactly, automation.
Automation. Through this forum, let me give you another thing. I think every possible industry has grown out of tax benefits or tax holidays. Digital media, which is about 4 to 5% of the total advertising dollars that are being spent in the country, has potential to become 20 to 30% of the advertising total world. Service tax, if there is no holiday on something like this. Even if there is something which has got into it right now and just last year, it's a little ambiguous. When you go to service taxes, we don't know what this digital media is, etc., and all that kind of stuff. Angel investments. Today, these the 10, 12-year boy that you're talking about who give out great ideas, promote angel investing, give them capital gain discounting, think about it that way. And I certainly feel the entrepreneurs will create that ecosystem. Just help the policy framework, help them, give them tax holidays. Another, go to China. Of course, different country. In digital, it's very difficult to compare China and India. But think about it this way. We are, as entrepreneurs, to a large extent, also left to do services. Products, we use global products. Can government do anything to kind of give us opportunity at the, for the first couple of years, 3 years, 4 years before Facebook actually comes into the country and create our Indian Facebook? Give entrepreneurs, an opportunity.
You're now asking for protection.
To some extent, yeah. I mean, why
but
not?
that's very antithetical to the technology space.
Maybe yes and no. I mean, we can debate about it, but maybe I've got a little more passionate about it.
The passion is what drives it.
But you know what? Then I would rather do. Think about it. If I do, either you give me a graded framework, like a global framework, to build global products, okay, or give me protectionism. Any one of them. Otherwise, I'm just left to do services.
That's a valid point. That either you have enough efficiency in the ecosystem for me to start up and test the market and let the market fail me. Let me be failed by a bad idea and not by the entire process of even getting to the market. But let me come back to the ecosystem. While there's a definite need for a better ecosystem and a policy framework which encourages entrepreneurs, but even if you look at the private sector, the kind of facilities or the options available for incubation, for even angel investment, for startup investment, there is a lot of crib about that as well, because a lot of them are seen as people who crush good ideas in favor of what is a better return on investment A lot of the young entrepreneurs say that they're forced to exit just to allow their investors to make money. So it's a combination of what the government is not doing and unfortunately what the private sector is doing.
So again, it's all about right now we're just trying to on the top of the pyramid, we're just trying to pull out that top all the time. So if we begin the base here, and that's where a lot of people are allowed to invest, at least the culture will be there. So it's not those few companies which there are 20 investors who are chasing and saying that you've got a Me Too idea and let me just take out the maximum amount of stocks from you, or let me just get that maximum percentage out from you. That'll go away.
Right.
It shouldn't be a Me Too anymore.
Correct.
So
we have to end in a few minutes, but Rakesh, one important point, and maybe you guys would like to pitch in, and that's something I'm sure that our audience at Yahoo is also worried about, is talent, Rakesh. So the talent creation, skill building is one of the key pillars of this government's focus. But again, skill and talent which is focused on professionals and creating employees versus skill and talent which is focused on creating an entrepreneurial mindset. Do you see that in the government's thinking?
I think they've laid a lot of stress on skill building, which was also enunciated by the earlier government, but somewhere there was a huge gap in credibility and execution. I think both go hand in hand. If there's a skill and there is an entrepreneur streak, which has to be encouraged from a policy framework and a private ecosystem put together, the two can give the desired results. They're not either or. I think skill development is waiting to happen in this country. We have a laborer in a plumber in Gurgaon being the most sought out person in the residential societies. But in the outside market, he would not be seen as on a premium, but he's actually at a premium. So we need to create a whole generation of plumbers, electricians. I'm starting from the base and then scaling it up. And that's where entrepreneurship can happen. I mean, if you pull in 10 electricians and 10 plumbers, you can have a startup.
But are schools and colleges and as NASSCOM sort of participating to ensure that entrepreneurship as a concept is embedded in the kids who are growing up?
Absolutely, and I think that is to be the work of life. And I think if moving forward the colleges can start offering some very specific entrepreneurship related opportunities and courses, whether it's coding, whether it's UI UX, whether it's inbound outbound marketing, these are very specific areas where the skill has to be enhanced so that the children are employable, or they are thinking about their own ideas to make
and all this seems to be happening only in the digital space right now. Digital India seems to be surging ahead because the rest of India has too many problems.
No, I think India leapfrogs and in technology, and I think government should take advantage of it. For example, mobile revolution. Government should actually possibly create skill-based apps and make it mandatory for app stores to have these government-specific apps on the app stores.
That's a good idea.
Where actually, how a laborer, he uses an Android phone today, but he should have an app there, how to make his skills better. My driver, how to make his skills better. And somehow government should force all the global companies that are present in India to actually use this mobile revolution to train a lot of people, to skill a lot of people, and see and look forward to it.
So you face problems of talent?
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah.
And how do you get over that?
Like I said, an entrepreneur is a fire in the belly. We find ways to kind of do it. That's, in India, that actually becomes our IP.
I would say, Pranjal, at the societal level also, I think we have a huge deficiency in terms of the mindset. Ask any parent today, my generation, if I have to tell my son that you want to become an entrepreneur, I'll say first try IIT, IIM, kuch nahi hua to fir, at least go to Delhi University. So I think we have to make a shift there as well, to be able to build and inculcate this culture of entrepreneurship.
Let me add to Rakesh, and I think that's very important. I think we have to kind of build that failure is okay. It's okay to fail. You will succeed only after failure. And startups is all about failing and getting up and fighting it out.
That's where risk-taking capability will happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
My time, I remember, if you were an entrepreneur, getting marriage proposals was difficult. But I think that has got a lot better.
So, that's one of the key benefits of being an entrepreneur. On that note, we have to wrap up. Thanks, Rakesh, Rajat, and Manish for joining us for this discussion. And to all of you, thank you for joining us, and I hope you found this useful. We all hope now that as the policies of the new government headed by Mr. Narendra Modi are unveiled over the next few months would actually focus on this, and the first step in that direction could be the Union Budget of 2014. Thanks very much for joining us.